Hey everybody, what is going on? I am Maximus Rex and this is Big Baby Reviews. Today is Friday. Hope you've got a great weekend planned. We are looking at some more Todd McFarlane. This is issue 4 of Spider-Man, cover dated November 1990. Continuing obviously the Torment storyline and McFarlane's first title as a writer. Do you want to mention he's been using that Dark Knight trope on all the first 4 issues, obviously because Dark Knight Returns only has 4 issues. So the death of the Dark Knight, I guess, is repeated here as the death of the Arachnite. So he's kind of just ripping off the taglines of the Dark Knight Returns miniseries on his first 4 issues. Not sure if it's going to be on issue 5, because obviously there is no issue 5 of Dark Knight Returns. Don't know if he's figured something out for that. We'll find out next week. So starting with the cover here, not that much I want to say. It's a typical kind of Todd McFarlane cover. He's using those great kind of circles to indicate that Spider-Man's kind of out of it a little bit, hallucinating. We've got a little bit of a hint of what's going on with Calypso and her, you know, I guess voodoo potions and stuff, and what she's been, the poison she's been using on Spider-Man to keep him off kilter. And she's, you know, somehow taking control of the Lizard, and he's kind of acting as her pet. And, you know, kind of just beating Spider-Man down piece by piece slowly over the last few issues. If you remember last issue, it ended with kind of a shot of Kraven the Hunter with a big hole in his head, referencing the Kraven the Hunter storyline. I forget, Kraven's Last Hunt, it's what it's called, where, you know, he succeeds in hunting down Spider-Man, burying him alive. And then for some reason he figures, like, if I remember the storyline correctly, he figures his life goal is attained. There's nothing more to do, so he actually commits suicide and kills himself. Kind of an odd storyline for a superhero comic book for kids. You know, those 80s were kind of weird. After Watchmen came out, you know, everyone was trying to outdark themselves with different storylines and ideas. So that was just maybe one of the more questionable ones. And when I say questionable, I don't have an issue with the storyline itself. I actually loved it when I was a kid and I was reading that in the 90s, because that was kind of the style of the day. Everything was dark and extreme and scary. So that was a general vibe of the early 90s. So it kind of fit. But yeah, looking back, it's an odd choice, I guess. You know, not calling for any kind of censorship or anything, but just an odd choice for a kid's comic. But there you have it. Todd McFarlane's making a lot of odd choices in Spider-Man for a kid's comic. Maybe not so obvious in these first few issues. Well, again, with Kraven the Hunter and his big hole in his head from last issue, and as you'll see in this issue, it being highlighted even more. Yeah, definitely not for kids, I would say. But when I was, you know, 10, 11, 12, and somewhat of a kid, I really enjoyed this stuff. You know, I saw horror movies, you know, Friday the 13th, the Nightmare on Elm Street movies when I was very young. Always could kind of, even as a kid, I remember, you know, thinking this is just a movie, obviously. So, you know, I didn't have any kind of nightmares with those kinds of movies or anything. As a kid, most of the nightmares I had were from real life stories and real life horror stories of, you know, human on human horror. I'll put it that way. Without further ado, let's open this guy up. Great cover. You know, really gives you a hint, a pretty obvious hint as to what you're going to find inside. And we start off with the great vertical panels that McFarlane masters so much. Again, I'm repeating myself, but just the masterful cropping he does. You know, it's not just about doing the vertical panel, but pulling off the cropping well enough so we understand what's going on here. So we're getting bits and pieces of Kraven that we kind of met up with last issue. Kind of a little hint here, a little foreshadowing the missing teeth, and just that little hint of, you know, again, the masterful cropping where he's like, I will show part of his head missing even here. So it's subtle, discreet. Maybe you don't notice it first, but obviously on the page turn, you always want to kind of have a surprise on a page turn, right? Or something interesting or cool. And well, there you go. Back in the day, like I said, this is the kind of imagery we thought was awesome. Very gross and very macabre, and probably to the limits of what Marvel was allowing at that time. But Todd McFarlane was their top artist. He was given a title to write. He could pretty much do what he wanted, and it sold, so they were kind of happy. One thing I want to talk about with this issue, a specific kind of detail that we're going to pay attention to as we move along, is the fact that this issue of Torment, Part 4, is credited as artist, writer, and colorist Todd McFarlane. So artist, obviously pencils and inks. He wrote this, and he also colored it, which is interesting. So letters, Rick Parker. So is there a huge, I remember as a kid reading this, there wasn't a huge kind of jarring jolt from last issue to this issue with the coloring, right? There's a similarity in the way that it's being done with, you know, the use of highlight colors, right, where McFarlane usually indicates them. He's a little more, obviously, because he indicates those highlight points himself, he chose to, in this image specifically, and others use a very bold kind of choice, a yellow here for that highlight. But I mean, that's was already kind of definitely going on in the other issues before this, right? So some people have said it's a little bit jarring. There's some interesting choices, right? As a zombie, well, there's some gray tones and green, it seems like, everywhere, which works, right? He's a dead corpse. His body is rotting. Lizard's still green, but yeah, some like I said, interesting color choices here and there, but overall I think it really works, and it's not too jarring within the storyline and within, I guess, you know, between issue 3 and 5. I don't think we're going to notice a huge difference in the coloring, but it's interesting that McFarlane was willing to give it a shot, and it's interesting that Marvel would actually let him. You're seeing more of that highlight that he's using here. He's not using quite as bold a yellow as before. This is a very light yellow, but same kind of idea. That great McFarlane design aspect when I always thought it was great on Spider-Man, and obviously made sense when he used the web for the panel borders and stuff. And look what he's doing here. Smart, right? One whole big panel, it seems like, but there's only really art up here. And what is it? Is it part of Kraven's rotting flesh or something, I assume? Or something like that. Not even sure what that is, but it looks interesting, you know, even though we don't know exactly what it is. But most of this panel is black space, right? This is quickly drawn. This whole panel is black until you reach the arm here and here. So he's using the negative space intelligently, creating different layers with the paneling, even having some strands going across here, which gives it even more layers and more depth. But there's just not that much drawing that he has to do there, right? His design sense is very, very sharp, and he's able to make cool looking pages with economical levels of art. You know, we always associate a lot of detail with Todd McFarlane. To a certain extent, that's true, but he's also very economical with that detail. It's a great page to kind of demonstrate that. The Doom that we've seen, that I continue to say should be Boom Boom, because I play drums, and I feel like Boom is more the sound of the drum than Doom, but it's a choice. It is a choice that confused me, though, as a kid, so I took it literally as the word Doom, so I thought it was a weird element throughout the whole kind of 5 issues. We're getting flashbacks to when he was buried alive in the black costume. This happened a few years ago. I'm not quite sure. Was it a one-shot or something, the Kraven's Last Hunt, or was it within... Mike Zeck drew it, so it was within, I think, one of the Amazing Spider-Man even, maybe series. Maybe it was just a little bit before Todd McFarlane jumped on Amazing Spider-Man. Anyways, someone will answer me, right? In the comments. I think he's really enjoying the kind of gruesome aspect that he's able to pull off here within the comics code. So I guess he can get away with it in this case because, you know, he's a zombie. I talked about this in the Rob Liefeld episode where, you know, Cable kills a Morlock, but Morlocks are like a weird form of monster mutant, I guess is how I describe it. So it's okay according to the comics code, and, you know, monsters, mutants, robots. So in this case, I guess this is Zombie Kraven, so you can show that. It's not something I see him do that much, but I feel like he used a stat here, photocopied this lizard here and reused it, which is smart. It works in the storytelling sense, right? Of just this idea that, you know, the lizard is the same, but it's the background. So we're, you know, kind of switching between what Spider-Man's seeing and his psychedelic horror vision and what's actually there. So it's not actually Kraven, but it's Calypso, who is Kraven's lover. And so they're enjoying, as the title implies, of the series, tormenting Spider-Man. That's what you're seeing here. Lots of black on the page, right? I talked about this before in prior Spider-Man reviews, that you'll notice throughout the whole series of McFarlane, most of the pages are, instead of all the negative space being white, the negative space is black. Pretty sure that's a conscious choice, and one that he brings over to Spawn, right, when he gets started at Image. Of course, we got a bit of B story with Mary Jane, who'd been out and just coming back home, I guess. Or is she leaving? I believe, I'm sorry, I think she's leaving to go out and party. we'll see some more scenes later, I guess. But obviously not the most interesting part of the story. And McFarlane's smart. He only dedicates really one page, maybe another one throughout the rest of this issue, but not many pages to the Mary Jane storyline, because obviously we're here for the Spider-Man action, right? Another great vertical panel establishing shot that McFarlane does with the silhouettes and the tall buildings in the back. Looks great. Doing something interesting here, almost implying like there's other panels that we've kind of missed along the way or something. I don't know how else to describe that. And we're zooming out also within those panels, which is cool. Just, again, that's his design sense. Very, very interesting visual cues that he creates. So, listen, story-wise, again, just a lot of, posturing and bitching about Kraven being dead and blah, blah, blah. And then there's some cool shots here. Again, the coloring, I feel, is pretty much still in line with what we saw before. He does have a tendency to maybe want to do more highlights, and here he literally just uses the white of the page for these highlights. But it works, I think. In the hair, maybe it's a bit much. Maybe like a pink or something, because she's a redhead. Just a lighter red, just to go straight white is a little odd maybe, but I've never, again, I'll say the same thing, I never thought it was too jarring when I read it as a kid. I never really noticed until someone pointed out that McFarlane had colored this issue. Love the look of Calypso here with the uplighting. I think that's really well done. We're starting to get clearer views of her. I think this might be the clearest shot of Calypso we've had throughout this whole series. So yeah, like I said, there are a few more pages right with Mary Jane. Using that church motif like that just right away saves him from establishing shot again, and just clues us in as to where we are. Clearly in the church. We're back to Spider-Man, the Lizard, and Calypso. All this extra stuff that he's doing here too that mirrors kind of that glassy vitrail, I don't know the word in English here, I can't think of it, look of the church window with the paneling here, kind of repeating some of those ideas and patterns there. I think is pretty clever, and it subconsciously reinforces where the environment is, where we are in the story. So this page I haven't read in a while, and I don't remember if it's supposed to be read as a double page spread like this, or if it's supposed to be read like this. But I definitely feel it's supposed to be this way, right? Because then there's a doubling here, and it doesn't. She had her first kill, the witch had her second kill and first soul. So like, there's way too much that happened between these two, right? And to have the same image is kind of odd. So I think in the storytelling department, this is a page where McFarlane kind of messed up a little bit, because I feel like we do have a sense that we would be following it this way, right? And it just doesn't work that way. You have to read this whole page first and then this one here. So I don't know how he could have really made a difference here and helped alleviate that. Just a confusing page storytelling wise when you go over it. I remember as a kid reading it wrong, basically. Interesting panel here as well. And all the use in the negative space of that drum sound, right, beaten into Spider-Man's head. I think that's just a very exceptional, something we don't see a lot of, I guess. Just completely, like all these techniques, just the figure with negative space, using that negative space to put in lettering, and even using the negative space of the page here to bring some what I like focus lines or action lines towards the figure here, but also doing it off kilter. It's not every line is going to the same center, right? Like a 1-point perspective. So it helps to, again, drive home that point that Spider-Man's suffering. It's off kilter. He's disoriented, all that stuff. Really like here, the cool shot of the lizard here, not all of a sudden no teeth, but just kind of the tongue subtly coming out here. I like it. There's a sly look on his face. Here's maybe where I would qualify this as an odd coloring choice. The using the mauve or the purple, I guess, here on top as the reflection color on the green. But if I'm not mistaken, purple and green are kind of complementary colors, right? I think. So, it's got an interesting look to it. Great splash here. Maybe this is a page where the colors do get a little bit busy. It's a little odd. Lot to kind of decipher. Using more contrast within the planes from foreground to middle ground to background could have helped, right? The values are kind of similar, right? In the opacity of the colors, especially Calypso and Spider-Man here. So more difference there could have helped. Either this much brighter or Calypso much brighter, just to separate the planes. The dooms are almost completely lost on this page, right? So again, maybe that's one of the pages where there's odd choices that don't quite work out. Here's another, yeah, you know what? Maybe I would qualify these two pages as well. It feels like maybe as he moves along, Todd McFarlane starts to try crazier and crazier things color-wise. So this lizard here being all blue is, I mean, it's not the end of the world. It's just, again, an odd choices throughout. We get a cool McFarlane hand here, right? The you know, outstretched towards the camera, kind of one of his tropes as well. Almost harkens back to, in a way, Infinity Ink art, I find. There's something Infinity Ink about just this panel here. Kind of a throwback. And, well, you know, there's a few simple ways to end a story on a cliffhanger to move on. So an explosion is one, a crash is one, you know, that type of scenario. So McFarlane's not reinventing the wheel. And some interesting color choices in his explosion here as well. So that is it for Torment Part 4. That was your Spider-Man issue 4. Thank you so much for watching, guys. If you're not subscribed yet, please do so. It really helps out the channel, helps us grow, helps us get us out there to more people. If you're already subscribed, we really appreciate it. Leave your comments below. Appreciate your support, and thank you everyone out there. Have a great day.
Like, subscribe, like, subscribe.
King Comics presents Big Baby, Volume 1, Issues 1 to 13. 204 pages of story and art. King Comics also presents Star Crasher one-shot, 32 pages, cosmic sci-fi surrealist adventure. You can find these fine comics at KingComics.CA, at MaximusRex13 on Instagram, or on Facebook, MaxRex or Big Baby.